I'm just going to re-ask the question to Aaron that I asked before, because I really, his answer is something that I think more people should. And then the question goes out to both Jan and also George. How do you keep on going, knowing everything you know? Where do you get the strength? And where do you keep on feeling that you matter, that you can do something?
Great question. Aaron.
Yeah. So, thank you for asking me it before as well, because that means I've had a bit of time to think about what I want to say. So it is a question I struggle with regularly. You know, there is many days that I find, I do find it difficult to think about how I'm going to get up and do it again. And I think that's just part of the work as well, right? That finding new sources of inspiration, new sources of hope. When I get stuck, I do often go back to Joanna Macy's work, and that's a spiral that I find helps me when I get stuck to move forward again. But I think the other answer is that how can I not, you know, and that was touched on as well, this feeling that, you know, knowing what I know, the awareness that I have, I think with that comes responsibility. I think Einstein once said, you know, with the privilege to know comes the duty to act. And I think that is something that I take with me every day. And then the other thing is it's that I'm not doing it on my own, right? I'm doing this with many millions of others who are all trying to make the world a better place. And we're building on top of generations who've come before us and have done that. And so that feeling of connection and community, both across the world, but also through time, and the feeling that I'm here just to pass on the baton to the next generation to carry on with the struggle. So just playing my part, and I think that helps, right? I'm not trying to save the whole world. I'm just trying to do what I can. And I think that's the question about what does the feeling that I matter. And there's a constant question of, like, you know, I guess ego deflation, right? That I don't matter in a sense, but it doesn't mean I don't have a part to play. And I think that's probably my answer to that part of the question. Yeah.
I would like to say something on that. I do careers talks sometimes, and the thing I always try and share with young people when I talk to them is just the sheer joy I have, as we were saying, from the community I'm in, but also from the work. This is fantastic work. I mean, I mean, I go back again to the quote I put up from Joanna, like, a huge privilege to be on Earth at this time, this absolutely key and pivotal moment. And the reason I've always done this, and I've worked on forest issues and land struggles and a lot of issues before this, is that it's a historical moment. And surely if there's something going on, you want to be in the middle of where the action is. It's for chance to make a difference, but it's also, you know, maybe from a more egotistic point of view, it's actually where the fun is. You know, like, how great to be there. And I don't for one second regret what I'm doing. I think the thing I struggle with, though, is not just the overwhelming, yes, I mean, this is very hard and dispiriting, but we were having a conversation earlier with Andy and David about, is it too late? And it's, well, no, because there isn't a line that says beyond this point, it's lost. In a sense, everything, you know, everything is about doing the very best we can with the situation that we have in front of us. But I am, as I get older, struggling with a sense of failure that maybe I didn't do enough. Because when you take on board this work, you take with it a responsibility for trying to do the best you can. And I just go, oh, maybe I could have been more successful there, or I could have done something there, or, you know, because you start to feel that losing is in some ways, in some small way, your fault. And that's the problem when you take up the moral challenge. But
I know some lamas who do lots of work and who do Dharma practice all the time. So, you know, when you see a lama doing that work constantly, well, you know, you're not doing so much. It's not overwhelming what I can do. So I don't feel like I'm doing the work. Hopefully I'm a teacher that can pass on some information. And I do get a great sense of joy from that. But that also comes from modeling that I had with Lama Yeshe, who told me, daughter, you learn everything you possibly can, because one day, just one day, one occasion, you might be able to help someone because you know that. So study all these languages, and I'm going, you know, because one day you may be able to help one person with that. So what I'm saying is he passed on this sense that you should undertake any action with joy, you know, because you might be able to help a little. So that joy is there. I don't think I'm doing a great thing, but he said, you know, you can tell stories, you can teach a little, that's good. You do that, dear. So I do what I can that way, and with a sense of joy. I think it was really important earlier, this statement about nonviolence. You know, you say nonviolence and people think, oh, you just become a dish rag. That was not my experience at all. It's nonviolent resistance. Don't forget the second word. You know, you can't forget the second part of that. In fact, the Buddha said, ahimsa, right? Dhammapada 183. Do no harm. But then he said, do nothing. He said, do no harm. You're supposed to do things, just do no harm. And do stuff, you know, practice. Do no harm, practice what is good. Discipline the mind. This is the teaching of all the Buddhas. So, the best I can, I try to do it. That feels good.
Thank you. Thank you. My two favourite answers to that question are, there's a guy called Peter Kalmus, a climate scientist, who, when people ask him what gives him hope, he says the fact that we've barely tried yet. It's really beautiful. And Paul Hawken, when he asked that question, he says, if you've spent any time studying the climate scientist and you're not a pessimist, then you haven't read it properly. Go back and read it again. But if you've spent any time among the movements around the world that are trying to do something about it, and you're not an optimist, then you don't have a heart. It's like that sort of backwards and forwards between those two things, I think. Yeah. Another question. Yes.
Actually, here it's not another question. I just wanted to add another thought to that. It's a Buddhist thought. And it's one that's actually I've been recently finding quite powerful. So Buddhism says there's a definite relation between cause and effect, right? I think there's more virtuous, positive action going on around the world now than there ever has been before. You know, this movement. And read Paul Hawken's book, Blessed Unrest, about that. It's incredibly inspirational. So if something pretty awful is about to happen, there's something on the other side of it. That is amazing, if when all these causes come to fruition. And I think, you know, this community has good reason to think deeply about that. You know, we have an extraordinary privilege of having received spiritual wisdom that is incredibly powerful. And we should not forget, you know, those positive results. They're going to happen. I mean, they have to, if we believe what we're being taught.
Thank you. Any questions for these highly informed, amazing minds in our presence until lunchtime? Yes.
I will, because I guess later on we're going to, my name is Laura Watson, and I am involved with a retreat centre in the north of England for FPMT. And I guess we're going to get to, so what are we going to do about this? And so my question is, what examples have you got from around the world of other organisations like us who are spiritual in nature, who are providing programs, education, spiritual development, who are engaging with this topic well? What do they do? If there are any.
I think there are plenty of examples of young people doing extraordinary things because it doesn't occur to them that can't be done. You know, the young guy who's collecting the garbage from the oceans, you know, and they said that, well, that's impossible. So there are these two ships, you know, with the big boom, and they just run constantly, 24/7, and he's collecting it. There are any number of we don't hear about it. There's a good video, PBS one called, what is it? The Future of, oh, that's important, isn't it? It's about the environment, and it's a 2-hour documentary. I'll come up with it. But it talks about all the innovations that are occurring now. And I just go, wow, I had no idea. And I think about Ella Baker, Ella Baker is a Black woman organizer, you know. She's the reason we know all of King's speeches because she was the deputy. They wouldn't let her be the real head of the NAACP in places where she was. But she set up the venues, and she gave the titles of what MLK was going to talk about. So all the speeches that we have that are so remarkable, we wouldn't know anything about them had it not been for her organizing. So Ella Baker sees in the young people, you may know a song about her by Sweet Honey in the Rock. It's called Ella's Song, which says those young people, you know, the song says, until the killing of white men, white mothers' sons, is the same as the killing of Black men, Black mothers' sons. We're gonna keep fighting. Why? I'm gonna fight until freedom's won, right? But Ella Baker's part of the lyrics of the song says, the young people, the older people might have the wisdom, but the young people have the strength and energy, and they don't see any stopping. So that's the kind of vision of positive things happening all over the world that we don't hear about every day. And I'll get the name of the video to you later. So I see a lot of that happening, but until we marshal it and maybe show it to people, they feel alone and like not a lot's happening, when actually a lot is happening. Just like, if I might just say two minutes about the nonviolent thing again, we spend so much time talking about our history in terms of wars that we don't realize that the movements that actually advanced humankind have all been nonviolent movements. Whether in South Africa, or in India with Gandhi, or in the US with the Civil Rights Movement, they've all been nonviolent movements that advanced all of humankind, not wars. Right? So a couple of things together, sorry.
Thank you. George?
So what I would love to come from this is conversations, is talking about it. A great deal of my work isn't about the psychology, it's about enabling and supporting people to talk with the peers, with people they trust in a conversation we were having earlier, sense of that this is a place where we can talk about it because you're amongst people who you trust, who you know, who you love. That's so important, and everybody needs that. In Ireland at the moment, I have a big program with the Irish government where we are trying to enable and support people to talk with the people they know and trust about climate change, whether that's in their church or in their farming group or in their community or in their workplace. How do we initiate that? There is a silence and we need to break it. And so the thing I'd really love to see from this would be that you go away and within your own communities, you initiate a conversation. Sometimes it's not enough just to have like, okay, let's talk about this. Sometimes it needs a bit of a structure. So, for example, it could be, well, let's get together. Here's a video. We're going to watch this. We're going to talk about it. But I think the important thing, and I'm sure you do this very well, is that everybody feels that there is a place for them to talk. So although we're doing this kind of expert panel thing, actually, this isn't really the way to do it. It would be much more what we were doing before, in pairs, in small groups. Let's talk about it. Not judgmentally. There isn't a right way or a wrong way. It doesn't have to be about doing things, but it has to be about saying, we want to talk about it. And one of the things that's very interesting on this, my final point on this was, as I said, I did a lot of work in Alberta, which is an oil province. We got people who had just come off the oil patch. They'd been digging in these huge machines. They'd been coming off. They sat around a table, had some beers, and talked about climate change. When they did that, it provided the space for them to say, actually, I think climate change is real, and I'm really scared about it. They never realized that before because everyone had shut it down. You have to allow the space for people's concerns and fears and hopes to emerge, especially with the most resistant, actively denying groups. So I would encourage that, and just start the conversation, just see what comes out of it.
Thank you. Thanks, George. I would definitely go along with that as well, because that's been my experience quite often. I think just taking that question slightly differently is, I think what I didn't talk about in this talk, because it was the science, it was the kind of, I think, I give other talks sometimes where I talk much more about what I think we can do or where I find hope. And I take a lot of inspiration myself from social movements and how they're organizing and building power and the strategies that they've developed. And so I came into the climate movement myself when I was, doing this research as a PhD student, and I joined a protest group at my university called People and Planet, and they started a fossil fuel divestment campaign to get the university to move its funds away from fossil fuels. And that was something that, I don't know, maybe 30 students on campus put a lot of work and time into, and ultimately succeeded in getting the university to move several £1 million to other investments, including renewable energy investment. That was part of a network across the UK. So this happened now at 110 different universities. And that's part of, just in the UK, it's connected to a worldwide movement, the fossil-free movement, which has now spread from universities to faith groups, to trade unions, and they've got their own organisations to divest their funds from fossil fuel companies and to reinvest it elsewhere. And the purpose of this wasn't so much just to move money into to kind of finance the transition. It was also very much more to do with how we kind of stigmatise the fossil fuel company, take away their social licence, and show that they have been this barrier to action that I was describing in my talk. And I think that then brought a whole generation of students into climate activism. And they've gone on to take up different roles, some of them on the inside lane, some of them on the outside, helping with groups like Extinction Rebellion and so on. And so, as people got more interaction, they learned more skills, they became more capable, and they started taking bigger and more bold actions, right? So that's just one example. But I think you can see so many similar strategies, but on different targets, right? So some of them are targeting finance and banking, some of them are targeting the law and trying to get the laws changed, some of them are focused on advertising in the media and trying to get more media institutions to talk about climate change publicly and so on. And so I think trying to organise so that we raise our collective voice and put pressure on these levers of power is how we move forwards. And the last thing I'll just say on this, because it's something I'm interested in, and is the notion of like social tipping points, right? Where we're pushing and we're pushing, we feel like there's all this resistance and we're never going to get anywhere. And then suddenly you get through the dam bursts and suddenly you see a big shift forwards. And we've seen that in history again and again with these social movements where, the campaigns swell, there's a huge moment, a decision is made and change is locked in, and then we can build on that again, right? So I guess that's where I look for how do these social tipping points reinforce each other, so that's what accelerates the transition to this new place. So I think the change when it comes will be very fast, or much faster than we expect. But whilst we're on this side of the change, it just feels incredibly slow and demanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
The video is called A History of the Future. makes sense that way. It might be something like a brief history of the future, a brief history of the future. I think that lots of people feel that they don't know how to begin something. And there's a great little book by James Lawson, who was trained in Gandhian nonviolence, black guy, who taught the Nashville, the sit-in folk in Nashville. He's 93 years old. Until he turned 92, he continued to teach every semester a course on nonviolent organizing. And he taught people at Nashville at the sit-in counters. Those people, John Lewis, Diane Nash, who went on to teach the Freedom Riders. I mean, the techniques of organizing. We need a good handbook on that. There is now one. It's called Nonviolent Revolution. Nonviolent Revolution is a course in organizing for change.
Beautiful, thank you. Just one thought I had in answer to your question as well, which was that when I interviewed Adrienne Ree Brown, who's an astonishing, brilliant black activist in the US, who wrote a book called Emergent Strategy, which is really fantastic. They said that actually one of the things that helped them most in the work they did was that there was an organization who look out for people doing really interesting activism and then offers them a month to just come and stay and be fed and be restored. Like people who are working so hard on the front line doing things and who get burnt out so quickly. There's an organization that just says, just come and stay here for a month. We'll feed you, we'll rub your feet, we'll make you nice cups of tea, wonderful. We'll let you lie in till midday if that's what you need. And so maybe that's a nice thing a retreat centre could be doing, is to just identifying key people who are on the front line and just saying, come here and be restored. We can offer that. We're going to stop for lunch. Speaking of being restored, and thank you all so much for your participation this morning, and see you at 1:30. And if you could we could end the morning with a round of applause for our wonderful guests this morning. Thank you.